The Chicago Bulls sparked a 20-point comeback victory yesterday, but how did they do it? They did it through teamwork, determination, and defense. We're going to talk a little bit about those things. Plus, we're going to talk about Nikola Vucevic proving to the world that he's indeed not washed up, and he actually has a lot in the tank, as he's been an important part of the Chicago Bulls' wins. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking, of course, about the Bulls' comeback victory, but not just the victory itself, right? We did that in the post-game show. How did it get done, right? And when you look at it again, the Bulls continue to prove that they can be a dangerous team offensively, but they still have some upside. And there was this particular group yesterday that really sparked the Bulls defensively, as well as contributions from Wes Unsell Jr. But let's talk about the core three to start off this game. Coby White, Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, right? I talked about yesterday how this Bulls team can maximize and reach their potential as a team, as an offense. And a big part of it was built around we need these core three players to be better, right? And you're seeing that. Coby White with 20 points, 5 assists, 5 3-pointers made yesterday. You have Zach LaVine, of course, with 30 points, having his best second half performance of the season so far, scoring 11 points in the fourth quarter of this game. It was hugely important to that and the balance that was there, right? Zach LaVine with those 30 points, Nikola Vucevic with 22, 7, and 5. Yes, we usually are going to see Nikola Vucevic be better on the rebounding, but the size of the Memphis Grizzlies really was giving the Bulls havoc. And then you got to also throw in Josh Giddey, but 2 assists short of his first triple-double as a Chicago Bull, 12 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. And I said it in yesterday's post-game show, and I'm going to say it again here. For the people that have the blind hate to Josh Giddey, at some point, you just got to wake up to the reality of what's in front of you. Is Josh Giddey a flawed player? Yes. Does Josh Giddey still have a lot left to show to be consistent before he can earn that $30 million contract reportedly he wants per year? Yes. But if you don't think that Josh Giddey is impacting the win of the Chicago Bulls, you're just either not watching the games and just looking off stats and trying to inform your opinion based off that. Josh Giddey made plays, and Josh Giddey made some defensive plays in key moments as well. Him being active defensively is such an important part of this team. And if you watch Josh Giddey, he was focused down the stretch of this game defensively, and that focus played an important part of this Bulls team being able to get out and wins. Yes, his shooting splits are going to be questionable at times. He needs to be better from the free throw line as well. He's shooting like slightly over 65% so far from the free throw line. As a guard that's going to get to the free throw line, he has to be better. In no way am I saying that Josh Giddey's this perfect player yet, but he is a player that is absolutely impacting winning for the Chicago Bulls, shooting 46% now from three, taking 3.5 3-pointers per game. The three-point shot is starting to turn into a legitimate weapon for Josh Giddey, and it's changing the way defenses have to defend him. Thus, it's opening up even more passing lanes for him right now. So far, Josh Giddey is matching his career high on on rebound numbers. He's right there as well with assist numbers. He's doing the things that made Josh Giddey a productive and good basketball player. He's playing at a really good level, averaging 14 points per game for the Chicago Bulls team. Y'all got to wake up to Josh Giddey. I'm tired of the blind hate. Criticism is one thing, and there's a lot to criticize about every Bulls player so far in this season. But to act like Josh Giddey is y'all basically doing the same thing that the national media did to Zach LaVine last year, and you're doing it for a player that's on your team just because some people, not all Bulls fans, want to be right about Josh Giddey not being whatever, that they are willfully blind to how well Josh Giddey is playing, especially down stretches of game. Yes, you can say that you want him to score more. I understand that. And that's a legitimate thing, but overall, Josh Giddey is really impacting this game. But let's get back to it, right? In yesterday's episode, I talked about what needed to happen to the Bulls to really maximize on their potential. And we saw a lot of it this game. The balance between the core three is a huge important part of that, and how they play over the course of an entire game. Coby, way more consistent in tonight's game. Zach LaVine being the player that, that we have often criticized Zach LaVine not to be. It's been one game, right? And we need to see more of it. But in a game that was close, in the game that our defense helped us get back into this game, and the Bulls' three-point shooting, Zach LaVine was a huge, important part of this team in that fourth quarter. And him and Josh Giddey's chemistry in that fourth quarter. Josh Giddey had 7 rebounds in the fourth quarter, all being key rebounds at that. And Zach LaVine, the 11 points he scored in just the fourth quarter, and Kobe White as well, 6 points in the fourth quarter of this game. We got some of the best basketball when it mattered the most from these core players, and that's going to be an important part. And another thing, another player that is being criticized based off what he is not, rather than people realizing and watching what he is doing, Patrick Williams is not scoring the basketball well this season. He's just not. But when you look at how Wes Unsell Jr., because it's not Billy Donovan, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the show, is using Patrick Williams defensively in this game. P. Will guarded centers in this game. He guarded JJJ down the stretch of this game as well as Zach Edey and others. Patrick Williams may not be scoring, but what Patrick Williams was drafted for, keep in mind, the impact that we knew Patrick Williams was going to be able to make right away was his defense. Now, as a 4th overall pick, is it wrong to want more than that? No. But at some point, the 4th overall pick and thinking that the highest potential is just not there. But what Patrick Williams is doing defensively for this Bulls team, he's guarded more positions more consistently at a higher percentage than anybody else in the NBA at this point. He's guarded 4 out of 5 positions consistently for the Bulls, depending on the play, right? And then his how well he's guarding against centers. Patrick Williams was part of a lineup that really sparked this team back. And that lineup was Ayo Dosunmu, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Patrick Williams, and Jalen Smith. That 5-man rotation between the length, the quickness, the getting out in transition that those players did and capitalized in those minutes. They also hit some big threes as well, that lineup. That was a lineup that really helped get this Bulls team in a position to win this game. And then your starters came back in and they solidified it, right? And that was really good to see when it comes down to it. Jalen Smith also scoring 9 points in the third quarter. Julian Phillips had 2 momentum-changing plays in this game. The dunk that he had on Aldama was brutal. Then he immediately followed that up on the next possession with a 3-point shot. And listen, that lineup, it's not going to be the lineup that's the most heralded, and we'll watch and see if Billy Donovan and the coaching staff use this lineup a little bit more against more athletic and lengthy teams, because that's what that lineup is. That's a lot of length. That's a lot of defense. That's a lot of disruption as well in that lineup that you have there. That's a really solid lineup. The wingspan, the height may not be there, but that wingspan was causing fits for the Memphis Grizzlies. And so, again, I said in yesterday's episode, how do we maximize our potential? We got to find a way to get rhythm and balance from this bench. And listen, that lineup, at least for one game so far, played really well, and I hope to see it again to see how much that lineup can still can play for the Bulls. And so the one thing in this as well that I got to point out is that the Bulls, when the lead got huge, when they were down by 20 points, the Bulls didn't resort back to heavy isolation or hero ball. They went and still played their system. Yes, they shot themselves back into it because the three-point barrage that the Bulls had yesterday, making 25 out of 53 three-pointers for 47% is huge in that as well, right? Make no mistake about that. That's huge for this Bulls team and what they were able to do. Getting 70 points, 75 points is huge. Like it's huge. So, you gotta, if the Bulls, that's how the Bulls have to win or lose. They're going to win or they're going to live or die by the three-pointer. They lived by it last night. And so seeing the Bulls stick to their style of play, to trust each other as they went through that system. And when you look at that lead and how they started slowly chipping away, right? 20 points, down to 12, down to 10. Then when the Bulls got in the 5-point range of that Grizzlies lead, you saw them, they switched it. That mentality switched from a thing of, oh, wait, we got the momentum here. We may still be down, but we got this momentum. And you started seeing these players play with a level of confidence that wasn't there in the first half of this game. The Bulls, in what they did here, they showed, again, the potential that they have. Now, we got to see it be consistent. We got to see it be there for a long time. I would say, let's get to game 2025, right? And we'll see where we sit. But enjoying the journey as we get there, learning and watching these players grow, develop their mentality, and coming together as a team. I think that's another aspect of this that's missed by a lot of people. This is a new team. I know for a long time we've had the same team that we've trotted out there year after year, and it's basically been the same thing that we've been expecting different results from. A lot has changed about this team. The makeup of this team has changed. The play style of this team has changed. The way that this team is coached has changed, right? Our whole offensive dynamic has seen such a change in this team, both in the pace and in the way that we're getting three-point shots up and hitting them at a solid rate as well. So, it's going to take some time, and I think that's the thing that takes that is the hardest to really judge is the patience that's needed for a team. How long does a team really take to really adapt to a new system and for it to become second nature? And so through the first couple of games, for the first few games, we saw a Bulls team that when they face some adversity, they have gone back to what they've done in prior years. And we're trying to get away from that, right? But the Bulls so far in the season through 4 games are averaging 116 points per game, right? That puts them in the top 10 in the NBA. We're also taking the third most three-pointers in the league, right? And we're hitting that again we're making the third most three-pointers in the league. This is a different team, right? And you cannot take away from that. We're 6th in three-point shooting percentage, hitting it at 38% so far on the season. Now, these numbers are going to drastically change. We're still very young into the season, but the Bulls are right there, right? They are adapting it. And while the defense is the thing that we need to figure out to get more consistent, the Bulls are doing some really good things out there, man. And you just got to keep your head about yourself. I like the way that this team is also getting to the free throw line decently well, right? We're in the middle of the pack of the league. A little bit lower of the middle of the pack of the league as far as free throw attempts. But how we move and how we get up and down the court, you like to think that thing is going to come around a little bit more for the Bulls. I don't expect us to be in the top of the league, but if we can be more towards the 15, 16 area, I think with free throw attempts, that's going to help as well with this team. We just got to play control and getting those turnovers down. The Bulls kept the turnovers down, only 9 turnovers in yesterday's game, and that's things that really help this Bulls team out. But another unsung thing that we got to talk about, the second half defense of this team. This team in the second half of this game, the defense went into another gear. And there's a reason for that, which we'll talk about here towards the end of the show, which we got to talk about Wes Unsell Jr. But another thing that I want to talk about before we get into that is Nikola Vucevic. Vuce, who said this: I don't feel like I'm on a decline or anything. People can say what they want, but I'm really just here to prove myself. Like everybody else, I've had some up and down years, but I feel like I have a lot left in the tank. The way I play is not really going to be affected by my athleticism. I think I can play for a very long time. And so when it comes down to what is that for Vooch, right? Vooch is playing some of the best basketball he's played in a Bulls jersey so far at the start of this season, right? Vooch also chipping this in. The last few years we've played well. We haven't played well. We haven't reached our goals as a team, so change was inevitable. I see and hear the rumors. People in my life talk to me about it, but I don't get involved too much. I suppose there's something were to happen and get more serious, they would come to me, talk to me, but at this moment, I don't think about it. And in that, he was talking about the trade speculation around him. Now, we're not at this point going to talk about trade speculation. As we get closer to the trade deadline, we'll maybe talk about that because, I can understand why people are asking that. Vooch is showing himself to be an asset. 20 points per game he's averaging now, 10.5 rebounds, 3 assists. He's doing that on 51% shooting from the field, which is his second best mark as a Chicago Bull so far. But what he's doing that is the best, not just of his Bulls tenure, but in his career right now. He's taking 5.5 3-pointers per game and hitting that at a 52% clip. He's never come close to that in his career. He's never come close to that. The highest 3-point shooting percentage that Nikola Vucevic ever had in his career was 40% with the season he was traded here from the Orlando Magic, and he was taking 6.5 per game. Vooch right now is showing that he is adapting offensively. And Vooch was the guy that I thought could be the odd man out as far as the way that this Bulls team wanted to play offense that he just may not fit. Vooch is fitting. And one of the reasons why that is happening is because Vooch is able to more naturally get to his spots. DeMar and Vooch operated in the same spaces. They both started and generated their offense from the same spots. They finished differently, but they started about the same spot. We're now seeing Vooch be able to get those spots more naturally, and it's getting him in rhythm. And then that rhythm that he's building is now coming out to the 3-point line for him as well, right? And as long as that's happening, right, and Vooch is still in this rhythm and playing this well, listen, Vooch is killing it. Now, Jalen Smith is killing it as well. Our bench unit has been great for the Chicago Bulls. I want to be clear here. 37 points off the bench yesterday for the Chicago Bulls. And what Jalen Smith does in his per-minute production has been great, right? And he fits stylistically with this team, all those type of things. But Nikola Vucevic, Vooch is having a renaissance in a way with the way that he's playing basketball right now. And I don't know if it's freeing because of the style. I don't know if it's freeing because we're getting them the ball more. We're still missing some opportunities to get him the ball in the paint, but we're doing that, right? We're doing it at better than what we've had in the past. We just still got room for improvement there. Vooch is responding with some of the best basketball that he's played in his career, right? And that is something that I didn't expect. And I said it again in yesterday's episode on how this Bulls team can maximize their potential. It came down towards how much of this Nikola Vucevic is going to be who Vooch is consistently. And if it is, you need that third scorer, because Kobe and Zach are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, but it's really been Vooch who's been the most consistent. When you look at the 4 quarters of basketball, Vooch has been the most consistent, and even stepping up at times defensively and being engaged there, and that's something you got to look for as well. So overall, I really like the way that Vooch is playing basketball, and Vooch is really contributing to this team, and especially when we're winning games, right? And other players that are contributing as well. Ayo Dosunmu, who had his best offensive night last night, but let's not make it just about the offense. Ayo continually makes winning plays when he's out there on the court. Heads-up plays, things like that. Ayo and this bench is getting in their rhythm. I already talked about Jalen Smith and his per-minute production because he's killing it on a per-minute basis. When Jalen Smith is in the game, good things happen, and he impacts winning in the game of basketball for this team. And then we already talked about Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips being part of that lineup that helped really change the tide of this game. And Lonzo Ball is also making an impact on the court. The Bulls are starting to settle into that rotation, right? We're not seeing THT. We're not seeing Torrey Craig. We're not seeing Chris Duarte, right? We started off the season going 11 or 12 deep. And so now we're seeing it where it's being constricted. And now basically Billy Donovan has his rotation of guys, right? Which leads us to the next thing that we want to talk about. And this is the thing that a lot of Bulls fans are asking. Why is Modest Busilas not playing more for the Chicago Bulls? This is the 11th overall pick that we drafted. Through the 4 games so far, he's averaging 6 minutes per game and 2.5 shots per game. And while, yes, Modest is an exciting player, and he's an exciting part of this Bulls future. And while I would love to see Modest Busilas play more, he's not, because this is a Bulls team that's not trying to tank, right? But I will give them credit. They are getting him minutes out there, so they're not doing him like Dalen Terry to where Dalen just wasn't getting on the basketball court. Modest has got on the court every game for the Chicago Bulls. And while it's not a lot of minutes to really get into rhythm and make it a huge impact, it is something to say that Modest Busilas just turned 20 years old before the official start of the season, right? And the Bulls are being structural in how they are developing Modest Busilas. They're getting him NBA reps right now. And in this case, if they do get an injury or something, it's not like he's going to have to, that he's not getting in games. Now, the role could definitely change, right? But we're seeing that Billy Donovan is trusting second-year player Julian Phillips more than Modest Busilas. He's trusting Dalen Terry more than Modest Busilas. And Dalen's only playing about 8 minutes a game as well, right? So I get it. I understand why Bulls fans are calling for Modest Busilas. I want to see Modest Busilas play basketball, right? And it was one of the more exciting things about coming into the season is getting to see a young player that has tremendous upside, but it's not all just about this season, right? And we'll see how it develops over time. And Modest is a very raw player. And as a matter of fact, I'll say this. Modest is just as raw as Dalen Terry. Now, he has a way higher upside than Dalen Terry, way higher than when Dalen came into the league. But Modest Busilas is just as raw as Dalen. And I'm at least glad that the Bulls aren't doing what they did to Dalen Terry and just not playing, right? Now, there's a little bit of concern with the G League season rolling around that he could be assigned to the Windy City Bulls. I understand that, right? I understand that concern. And maybe that is something that happens, right? And we'll see what happens over there. I think if Modest does go to the G League, it has to be structured in how they want to use him, meaning that don't just be down there to get in cardio, be down there to help this team. And so we'll see what comes along for that. But listen, I hear you guys' concern. I'm a little concerned about it too, but I think when you kind of step back and zoom out, they're just being very, like I said, structural in how they're using Modest, and we'll see if that role starts increasing for him as the season goes on, right? We'll see that. But I said I wanted to talk about another surprising aspect of this team before we go. And there was a period in this game last year where I saw something that gave me a lot of joy. And that was during a key period of the game where the Bulls were on defense. It was not Billy Donovan who was up on the sideline. It was Wes Unsell Jr. And Wes Unsell Jr., while this Bulls defense is not great, right? But during a key period of time where that defensive lineup that I told you guys was out there, that had Julian Phillips, Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, Jalen Smith, and Dalen Terry that end up making a big defensive impact. It was Wes Unseld Jr. up on the sideline, calling those plays, guiding those players, and that maintained even when those guys were in the game. Wes Unseld Jr. may be one of the unsung heroes of this Bulls team when it's all said and done, and he's somebody that I think a lot of people need to watch out for. I know we don't talk a lot about coaching as far as in the sideline game to game, but for Billy Donovan to do something that he has not done before and turn over a whole set of the game over to another coach to do that, right? That is Billy Donovan showing awareness that a coach is bringing something that he may not bring, right? And that's trusting your veteran assistant that's been on a coach of a championship team before, right? An assistant coach on a championship team. So I'm glad to see Wes Unseld Jr. really stepping into that role of the defensive coordinator in a way for the Chicago Bulls. And it's something that I think is going to help the defense a lot, getting that change of voice, right, than what we've seen in prior years. And, you know, this is a Bulls defense that doesn't have the individual defensive talent that some of the prior teams recently have had. And so Wes being the orchestrator of the Bulls defense is going to be something to look out for as we go along. You got a lot of young players that have tremendous defensive upside that if you find the right combination of those guys can really help this Bulls team. And we saw it last night. And Wes Unseld Jr. deserves a bit of the praise because of how he's been coaching this team defensively. We talked about it in training camp, right? Wes Unseld Jr. was the guy who was in charge of crafting this defensive mentality for this team, this defensive system for the Chicago Bulls team. And it's going to take its bumps and bruises because of the personnel, but he's figuring it out. And Wes Unseld Jr. has made a really big impact on how this Bulls team plays defense, and it's going to be really important to keep watching. But let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.